Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today is a very exciting video because we have quite a stack of books to go over for my February and March reading wrap-up. It is 2 months of reading, but in fairness, my February month was very busy, so I only read 3 books that month. But I did kind of try to make up for that in March. And I ended up reading 8 books, technically 9, but we'll get into that in a second. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. I finished the acotar series by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the last book that's out right now, A Court of Silver Flames. And this is Nesta and Cassian's story. And I really like this one. It didn't trump A Court of Mist and Fury for me. That one still prevails, but I still really liked it. And I think the reason for that is that I simply can't relate to Nesta as a character. I thought she was written a bit extreme in the way that she behaved. I know that she's angry with her father, but she was mostly just taking it out on her youngest sister, and I just didn't think that was justified. However, I did relate or sympathize with her in the sense that she is a character who would retreat when she's struggling and she wouldn't want to be around people, and it was really inspiring to read about her overcome all of that and come into her power and build relationships and kind of, you know, restore her relationship with her sisters. And that was the bulk of the story. It was really immersive. I was rooting for her throughout her entire journey. I think she turned out to be pretty badass. So I rated this one 4 stars, but to be really specific, it was more like a 4.5. I just couldn't give it that 5 because Nesta's just not my favorite character. Okay, so the next book I read was Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. This is technically a dark romance, but it's also a comedy, so it's like a dark rom-com. I really like this book. I rated it 5 stars. It was witty and funny and fast-paced, and it's about 2 serial killers. So there are a lot of gruesome and explicit scenes in this. Essentially, they meet and they find out that each other is a serial killer, and then meet up every year for this game where they hunt down their next target, and whoever hunts them down first gets to kill them. So they're supposed to be targeting bad people like other serial killers or criminals, and it is giving a little bit of Dexter vibes, but with romance. So over the years, they meet up for these games and start developing feelings for each other. There's a lot of witty, fun banter throughout the entire book, and overall it was like a really fast and fun read. I also listened to the audiobook while I was reading this, and I really enjoyed that because the 2 narrators are in the same room with each other, so it's kind of like a live conversation, and it's a lot more immersive than just like a regular audiobook. I highly recommend you do that as well. But as with any dark romance, make sure you read the trigger warning list at the beginning of the book, and they also go over that in the audio. Then the last book for February that I read was on my Kindle while I was traveling, and that was Cupid's Anonymous by Leila Monroe. This book is about the main character, Poppy, who is a writer, but she writes love notes, love letters, or anything that her clients need for people who have difficulty kind of like expressing their feelings, and she helps them out with that. She basically helps them put their feelings into words. Then the main love interest is one of her clients who uses her services frequently, and through a series of events, they basically start having feelings for each other. It was a quick, light romantic comedy, not too much depth to it, but it served its purpose as fast entertainment and kept me entertained throughout the end. And I rated it 3.5 stars. Okay, so on to my March books. I read the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber, and this is the prequel series to Once Upon a Broken Heart, and that's the series that I really wanted to get to, so I ended up reading this one really fast. It's a young adult fantasy series, and this was good. It was enjoyable. I really liked it. I rated the first one 4 stars, and then Legendary and Finale, I rated both of these 3 stars. I did like it. I think it was a little young for me. I think I'm going to start to move away from YA a little bit. There's still a few series that I have on my TBR that I want to read that are YA, but I think I'm going to slowly kind of start to move away from YA. Anyways, the writing in the series is really beautiful. It's very descriptive, very easy to read for fantasy. It's not super convoluted. There's a lot of mystery and magic in this where you're kind of like not sure what's going on, like what's real. And it's just a magical world that the characters have to decipher. The premise is basically that there is a magical game that takes place every year, and it's called Caraval, and it's led by this guy named Legend, and he has magical powers. So this series follows 2 sisters, Scarlett and Donatella. Scarlett is the older sister, and the first book is from her perspective. So basically what happens is they get tickets to Caraval, and on their way there, Donatella goes missing, and Scarlett basically has to find her. The second book, Legendary, is from Donatella's perspective, and they go back into the game, discover Legend. I don't remember if they discover who Legend is in this book or if it's in the last book. She also has a couple of romantic relationships in here, and this time Tella is the one navigating through the game. Also in this book we get introduced to Jax, who I think is one of the main characters in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, but I'm not sure. And the final book is from both of their perspectives, kind of like a dual POV situation. You also get a lot more of their mother in this one. There was a lot going on, especially at the beginning of this book, which made it kind of hard to pinpoint like where exactly the story was going to go, which is the reason why I would say that this one is my least favorite one of the series. But overall, the series was still really, really good. Okay, so the next book I listened to was Twisted Love by Anna Huang on audio. This is a new adult contemporary romance. It follows our main character Ava and her love interest Alex, and I honestly didn't like this one too much. It basically starts off with Ava's brother who is going abroad, and he asks his best friend Alex to watch out for his sister while he's gone. So he moves in next door so he could be in close proximity to her. He ends up becoming like very possessive of her, and I thought it was just like a little bit extreme. He's basically the brother's best friend turned neighbor turned kind of jealous stalker who's also a grumpy billionaire CEO. Whereas Ava, on the other hand, is the eternal optimist. She's kind of a little bit naive. She's desperate to be loved. She's dealing with like some kind of memory loss from her childhood. It's obviously a grumpy sunshine, which isn't my favorite when it's this extreme. And also in the book, he calls her Sunshine, which is like very on the nose. So I thought there was very little character development. The author tells a lot, not shows. And I thought that she used a lot of cliche kind of tropes and scenes. And also the third act breakup was due to a simple miscommunication at the end, and I just don't love that. Overall, I was pretty disappointed with this one. I rated it 2 stars, and I don't really see myself continuing with the series at the moment, but I don't know, maybe her writing gets better and maybe I will, we'll see. Also, the audio for this wasn't great. It was dual POV and they had a male and female narrator, but they would do separate chapters. So for Ava's chapters, the female narrator would read it and she would read both the male and female parts, and then she would kind of like lower her voice to read Alex's parts, and then on Alex's chapters the male narrator like would raise his voice sort of to read Ava's parts, and it pulled me out of the story a little bit. It wasn't like with Butcher and Blackbird where it was still like both male and female narrators, but they were in the same room when they were doing it, so it was more like immersive and kind of like made more sense when you're listening to it. So like they were, you know, having a real conversation, like sometimes would talk over each other and, you know, laugh and have emotions and things like that. So yeah, this one wasn't my favorite. Okay, so then I started the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, and this is House of Earth and Blood, which is the first book of the series. This is 800 pages long, and it was truly amazing. I rated this 5 stars. I really, really love this one. It's a long book. There's a lot of character development in this, especially in the first half. The first 400 pages are just like introductions to new characters and introduction to the world. There's a lot of world building. It's just very, very densely packed, especially in the beginning. But then once you get used to it, you kind of like start getting into the story a little bit more, and it's just really, really great. Also, in order to help myself, I ended up just writing down all the character names on a post-it note and kind of like adding them into the book so that, you know, I could keep everybody straight. But once you get past that and you get into like the bulk of the story, it becomes really, really good. This is an urban fantasy, which means that it's set in like modern times. Like everybody has phones and cars and everything like that. So it's not like other Sarah J. Maas books where they're kind of like set in a mythical world, kind of like in the past. There's no technology, but this has all of that, which I thought was really, really cool. The main character's name is Bryce. This basically starts off with her trying to solve one of her friend's murders, and it's kind of a mystery. She also gets assigned a bodyguard. His name is Hunt, and he becomes the love interest. So the development of the relationship is there, but it's not super heavy on the romance or spice. But that's okay because it just gives so much more than that. It just, you know, like it's a 3-book series, and you know, those things need time. I also really loved Bryce as a character. She's brave and intelligent, and she's kind of a badass, and so is Hunt, and he's, you know, he's kind and generous and like kind of selfless, and I thought that they were like just the perfect combination. So I can't wait to read book 2, and this was a definite 5 stars. So in addition to this, I also listened to the graphic audio of this, but it was only part 1 of this because this is coming out in 2 parts. I believe part 2 is coming out April 29th. Now, graphic audio is different than just an audiobook. It's like a whole production where, you know, you have sound effects and music and obviously multiple people narrating the story. So it was really, really amazing. Like, for example, if they're having a conversation outside on the street, you hear street noise, you hear people talking in the background, you know, you hear rain, you hear, you know, people kind of arguing in the background, or like cars going by, and you know, it's just very, very immersive, and I really, really loved the graphic audio. It was my first graphic audio that I've ever listened to, but highly recommend. I rated the graphic audio 4 stars, and that's primarily because I just didn't love the narrator of Bryce. I thought that she kind of made her sound a little too like party girl, valley girl kind of situation, and I just couldn't like connect with her, and it kept pulling me out of the story. Yeah, I had to take off a star for that. So I rated it 4 stars, but it was still really, really good, and the story and the book are definitely 5 stars. Next, I started reading the Chestnut Spring series by Elsie Silver. I read Flawless, Heartless, and Powerless. There's 2 more in this series that I haven't read yet, which I'm gonna probably do April, May. But these were really great. These are interconnected small town romances, and I'm sure you've heard of these because everybody has basically already read this. These are really, really quick reads. They're fun, they're easy to digest. I read each of these in like basically a day and a half, but I'm sure anybody could get through these in like 1 sitting. So the first one in the series is Flawless. This is a small town enemies to lovers. It follows the main character, Rhett Eaton, and he is a professional kind of bronco rider at the rodeo, and he ends up finding himself in a tough situation with his reputation. So his manager ends up assigning his daughter Summer, who also works at the agency and she's trying to become an agent, to kind of watch him and make sure that he doesn't get into any trouble. So she ends up moving into his house so that she could be in close proximity with him. Neither of them are happy about it, but you know, they kind of have to do it, so it kind of escalates from there. I really liked both of the characters. I really liked their relationship. It was great. Like, I rated this book 5 stars. And the second book in the series is Heartless, and this one follows Cade Eaton, who is Rhett's older brother. And this one is about Cade needing to find, he's a single dad, but he needs to find a nanny for his son. And he's having a hard time finding the nanny because none of the nannies that he's interviewing are working out. So Summer from the first book ends up introducing him to her best friend Willa, and then Willa becomes the babysitter for the summer. This was really good for the first half of the book, but it kind of fell flat for me for the second half of the book, right when the spice scenes kicked in. And I don't know if it was just me because it did get a lot of positive reviews, but it just didn't hit for me for the second half. Cade was a lot. I also noticed that the author kept recycling the same kind of like cringy lines that he used over and over again throughout the second half of this book, and it just wasn't hitting for me. Needless to say, this wasn't my favorite book in the series. I really loved the first book and I liked the first half of this book, but it just kind of ended up falling flat for me, so I ended up rating this one 3 stars. Then I moved on to the third book in the series, which is Powerless. And this one follows Jasper Gervais. He ends up falling in love with Sloane Eaton, who is the sister. He's a professional hockey player, she's a ballet dancer, and it starts off with her kind of running out on her wedding because she finds out that the guy that she was about to marry had cheated on her. So she goes back to the ranch with Jasper, and they kind of like, you know, spend time together and rekindle their friendship, and then that turns into their relationship. I really love this one. It's technically a friends to lovers. But yeah, I really loved it. I rated it 5 stars. So far this series is really great, and I'm just going to continue with it and hopefully finish it next month. So that's it. These are all the books I read and listened to in February and March. And if you've read any of these or listened to them, please let me know down in the comments below and how you felt about them. All my links are below with my Goodreads and my TikTok and my Instagram, so feel free to say hi, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.